We good?
Yeah.
All right. So welcome everyone to the October 16th Utilities Committee meeting. And I guess we're going to get started with the Annapolis Creek Consultants.
Or do we want to do?
Or are we going to go right to Lacey?
No, these will be quick.
Okay.
So the Annapolis Creek Consultant Selection, so as we reported at the last meeting, there was the mayor directed Public Works to try to do a capital project other than just Tremont.
Yes.
This is mainly just an update to that, where we had previously gone out for requests for qualifications. We received 6 statement of qualifications, and through a scoring process of a panel, this just shows that KPFF, Reed Middleton, and Red Barn Engineering received the highest scores. So we'll be interviewing, I think the next week or the
Next Friday.
next Friday, for that. Oh, there it is. It's in the email. I was too efficient. On the 27th. So at that point, we'll interview, select, and then I'm hoping to get this on the agenda sometime in November, so that we get going. And this is for a complete ad-ready design, permitting, and it entails a lot of aspects. It's the potential flooding of Arnold and the homeowners there. It's fish barrier. It's the sewer line that's running through the culvert. It's the structural integrity of the culvert. There's a lot to this, so that will be a very intensive design. And then again, the permitting is not necessarily actually getting permits in hand, because we don't have the construction funding yet, but it would be at least having some document, some sort of a development agreement and a local agreement where all the agencies have acknowledged that they support the project. That's really what the goal is. Well 9 update. The bid opening for the Well 9 retrofit project was supposed to be this last Friday.
The 13th.
Yes.
That's a lucky day.
Yeah, well, it was.
Really low bids.
Yeah, no, it was a Friday the 13th, in that on Thursday the 12th at the 11th hour, we had issued an addendum on Wednesday morning, which was for us, we don't like to issue addendums less than 36 hours in advance,
Right.
because we want everybody to have the chance to have that information. We received an email Thursday afternoon late, and it had to do, there were 3. One was about the non-collusion document in the contract, which was, they just weren't understanding what that was. That would have been a simple response back to that individual that didn't have to go out to the whole. But then there was a question on the polyleucite filtering rate. One of the contractors was challenging HDR's design rate, saying that this seems double than what it should be in comparison to the gallons per minute from the well. So there was enough confusion that we thought, what, there's no reason to have a bid problem, last minute bid problem. So we sent out we rescinded the bid first thing Friday morning, right out of the gate, in case we had somebody that was driving up from Portland or something. The previous contractor was out of Oregon, so hopefully, there was one guy that was pretty upset, but so, hey, it is what it is. We're rescinding the RFP, and we'll be reissuing once we resolve this technical issue. And then with that, then the only other thing on this agenda is waste management, and the background to that is in the past, the city's had requests from certain individuals to not have to have garbage service. There were 2 in particular, one up on Morton, one out at McCormick, and now there's the most recent gentleman out Bethel area that came in with the
Blueberry,
annexation.
right?
Blueberry area, yeah. And so we know that the city's code is very black and white, and We know that the city in the past the council has chosen not to change that language. And I think Fred had asked for Waste Management to come in and talk about that. And I guess what I'm thinking is, are there other cities that you provide service to that don't have mandatory, like it's somehow voluntary, or
We call it subscription service, yeah.
and then for those in cities that have mandatory, what other options are out there? Like, can you have a monthly service, or we really want to see, so that instead of telling somebody, sorry, you got service and you got to have your can picked up every week and your recycling picked up every other week, are there certain things under certain agreements that you can say, okay, we recognize this, and we'll pick up your recycling once a month, and we'll pick up, So with that, we just want to understand waste management.
I want to ask a couple questions too. So, and I may be jumping way ahead, but if there was a way for somebody to demonstrate that they were a model citizen in terms of almost a zero footprint, what would that look like if that's even possible? And are
That
you
would be
aware?
fantastic.
Yeah, well,
I think
it seems like a tall order. And are you aware of other jurisdictions that have something like what we're hoping to talk about?
Yeah, so I
I
guess,
think because I think that's more of a city conversation, right? Waste management is going to say, look, we provide this service, but if your
Right.
process, it has to be,
yeah.
it's got to be black and white.
Let me
Yeah.
back up then.
Yeah.
It sounds like you provide to the area, including the county.
Yes, sir.
And the county is not requiring that every resident have subscription
Correct.
service.
The county
Okay.
does not have a mandatory
Okay.
garbage collection.
But I think it's
That's a
important
city-
maybe it's important to first frame how the city's management garbage solid waste is managed. So the city is operating under the umbrella of the Kitsap County Solid Waste Division. They have the contract with Waste Management. We have an interlocal agreement in compliance with the solid waste program of Kitsap County. So it was Kitsap County that went through the RFQ process and selected, Waste Management over Rabonco or some of these other.
Well, actually, that is, we're under the Utility and Transportation Commission.
Right.
So it's, we basically, this is our territory, the county territory, unless the city chooses.
Oh, that's what that contract.
Right.
But
Yeah,
but you went
but
through.
it's under the state is how we operate with Utility and Transportation Commission, but we're also required to operate under their rules and regulations, Department of Ecology, Kitsap County, and Kitsap County Health Department, and the City of Port Orchard's
Okay,
municipal
so-
codes.
So years ago, this is a long time ago, I was actually, when the contract was opening up, I guess to build the tip, and
Oh, yeah, over at OVTS?
yeah, I was on the Rabonco consultant team.
Ah.
So but that was with the county, right?
Mhm.
So that
The
was.
county owns the land, they own the landfill when that was open, and we were contracted to operate it.
Okay.
They closed the landfill and then built the transfer station. They put the building of the transfer station and the operation of that out to a proposal process.
Okay,
And
that's.
that we're under contract to manage it.
Okay,
The
that's
county
outs-
still owns it.
Okay, so that's outside of the state. So you're the state designated. You went
Yes.
through a RFP process to become the state designated.
Well, that's another long story. But the state, I want to say back in the 60s, could have been even sooner, earlier than that, where there were haulers operating in different parts across the state.
Like primary disposal.
You were pretty
when we were
much, you were
kids.
grandfathered in and you owned that territory. And the state took, how do I want to say that? They took they allowed you to operate under that, but they were going to manage it, right? It was kind of like, it's just we call them tariffs. So we operate under tariffs. We have a garbage permit within very designated areas across the state. We have them. There are lots of garbage haulers.
Isn't that
Everybody, the only way that we can lose that area is if we're obviously not performing service, and or if a city annexes a portion of that county into their city service area, then that comes under whatever the city franchise agreement is with the
So
hall.
it's not like Pierce Sound Energy. They operate
Right,
through a tariff and
exactly.
a franchise agreement.
That's exactly right.
And they're
And the
also
utility,
managed by the
UTC,
UTC.
has
Okay.
oversight of all of that.
Right.
Anytime we do rates, we have to do filings, and we have to go before the UTC Commission down in Olympia and justify what our filings are for any kind of rate changes. And the city of Port Orchard, right now, we operate the rate structures under the UTC. So it's not a separate rate structure, but that allows you the benefit of having a reduced rate or a rate that's based on, 40,000 customers across the county, instead of just cost of service within the users of City of Port Orchard.
So how does the county solid waste program, why, we have an agreement with Kitsap
The
County Solid Waste.
Like you talked about, your interlocal agreement. So all of your communities in the Kitsap County area have made agreements with the county to have all of your garbage go through the county's program facility
Right.
for disposal.
So-
And that allows for lower disposal rates too, when you do it like
Right,
that.
so their program, I guess I haven't read it in a while, but, Dean Boner
Uh-huh.
and the other gal.
There's Pat Campbell,
Pat Campbell,
oversees the solid waste
They had
division.
been there, so they had written this documentation,
Mhm.
which is basically a user's manual that established like
Yeah.
targets and
Yes.
operations and things. Like, that was before the county, it was like mandatory curbside for.
Yes, and so
recycling.
they do have a code about mandatory recycling, and it is every other week, minimum collection service. And same with their yard waste service is a minimum every other week
That's what I
collection.
have.
And that's under the county's code.
So
And
does this essentially cut short the discussion with this
Mhm.
particular gentleman?
well, not really.
Am I hearing correctly that this sounds like now it's more of a city issue than a waste management issue?
It is this particular issue is a city issue.
Right.
Because it's our code,
It's
it's
our
very
code.
black and white.
Yeah,
50 years ago.
what's that?
The
About
code.
50 years ago.
Yeah, well, I
however-
have the age of it, I'm not a decision maker, but from a public works perspective, the intent hasn't changed. You talk about,
I don't disagree with that. We heard a very compelling case from someone who is not producing any garbage and has been in the county, and he's been annexed to the city.
Mhm.
And it seemed very reasonable, or it seemed unreasonable that we would be requiring him to
To
take
have-
out a subscription for something that he wouldn't use.
So does he currently not have garbage service?
It's a
It does
very,
not. It's a very unusual situation.
Okay.
Very rare.
Mhm.
But we apparently don't have any sort of exception for something like this.
no, but again, I'll say what I said at the last meeting, is the problem that you have is, I sat close enough to code enforcement over the years to see the volume of letters that get sent out for, abandoned vehicles on the street, abandoned vehicles on the property, grass that's 3 feet tall. I mean, it's huge,
Never ending.
never ending. And if you were to add, most people are diligent about their garbage. And if they have mandatory service, like before I had mandatory service out in the county, I went every weekend and I went out to the Sand Hill transfer station and took my garbage and before they had recycling, and then I started my own recycling because I don't want garbage on the property. I don't want rats and, but I'm just saying, when I look at what code enforcement deals with, people that are stealing water and jumping, meters that have been locked and, taking water from their neighbor. You have a populace that not everybody is going to have the same value. And if you start graying, making it more subjective and giving loopholes, I'm just saying from a public health standpoint, you're opening the door for, I'm not saying this guy doesn't do a great job. The problem is that if there's a loophole and then somebody else has it, they may not be that way. And at minimum, you're going to create a code enforcement issue. They're going to be out writing letters, and with every letter, there's follow-up, right? It isn't just like, we sent you a letter.
I think everybody agrees with that. I think everybody understands that the 1%, or it's probably not even 1%,
Exactly.
are paying for the ills of those that would have used the system. I'm curious, is there a model out there that somebody's developed to address that? And so here's an extreme example is where somebody goes and actually has walked through what this guy does, you know, and I'm just making this up, but you know, once a month, somebody goes and he says, here's what I've done, you can see what I've done here. And I mean, that's not feasible, but you can see where I'm headed. Is there somebody or an agency or a city or somebody that's
I think,
addressed
you know,
this?
I've worked in this industry for 22 years now, and once upon a time, when I think budgets were more robust and you had staffing and people who could go out and do things, that you did have people within a code enforcement department, as an example, that would say, go to this particular customer that is a super recycler and really is generating maybe an itty-bitty little amount of garbage every month. And they would go out and they'd have a checklist, right? Like, oh, your backyard composting, okay, check. Oh, you're self-hauling all your recycling, okay, check. And they would go through a process, you know, kind of like what you described, and they'd say, okay, we'll allow you to have our minimum level of service, which in this city, it was Auburn at the time, was a 10-gallon can one time a month. But they still had to have a minimum level of service. They wouldn't let them have no service. They have mandatory garbage.
And this guy doesn't have zero garbage.
Yeah.
He'll tell you.
So they
But over
would
a period of
allow them to
couple
go
months,
to that
it's really
minimum.
Still small.
Yeah.
Does Waste Management still have a program like that?
Well, that's not our program. That was a city
Oh, that was
program.
City of Auburn.
The city did that, yeah. But of course, they don't have the staff to do that kind of work
Right.
anymore. So in the city of Auburn, their minimum garbage level service with a mandatory garbage collection is a 10-gallon. They require everybody to
That's
have
not
something,
very
and that's even when there is an unoccupied house or building, they're still required to have 10 gallons of service.
But they don't,
Unless they specifically tell us this is an abandoned home, it's
Right.
totally empty,
Right.
don't worry about it.
So right now
Right.
we have 30 times 4, right? 30 gallons
Yeah.
every week.
so even with
Well,
that.
that's, we offer different services than that.
So like we have, the services that we have following the UTC rate structure, we have a 20-gallon cart, which is actually more expensive than the 35-gallon cart, but one time a month on a 20-gallon is $16.55 roughly. And so what I've done is, in the way it's laid out in your bills, you can put the garbage cost, which is $10.57 a month, the recycling cost, which is $7.10 a month. And then each month right now, there's a credit that goes back off of the recycling commodities, which is $1.12. So they reduce that. So that gives you the $16.55. And the 35-gallon, doing all that same formula, is $13.06. And that's for one time a month service. That still includes your every other week recycling. So
At a 64-gallon cart.
a 64-gallon, yeah, on the recycling.
On the
Yeah.
recycling.
Yeah.
So
So
the
did you say that-
every other week, that's a county, the curbside recycling,
Mhm.
that's a county program.
Yeah.
So we couldn't even affect that, right? In the
Well,
city?
I think it's just what it is.
Yeah.
I think we only offer that
Every other week,
Every
yeah.
other week. There's
Yeah.
not a once a month.
But
there's
what
not
I'm saying is
recycling.
the city's code couldn't preempt the county's curbside. I thought that was a
Well,
countywide.
There's a lot of ways, I would say, yes, you could do that. It depends on what you want for your community, right? But then that involves a whole new contract, that involves looking at different costs. And if you wanted to stay under UTC rate structure, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know if you really want to go down that path right now. I mean, it's a lot of, I think you have a good program. You have every other week recycle service. You have subscription to yard waste organic service. And you have the weekly garbage service, and you can go to a every other week garbage service, right? No,
But
No.
you have that.
weekly garbage
Weekly or
service.
monthly.
Weekly or monthly, yeah.
Yep.
So there's a lot of options that are available.
So
And-
did you say Auburn still has the 10-gallon,
That's their minimum level of service.
but they
yeah.
don't have the staff to go out and do that walkthrough?
No.
So,
They do not.
huh. And
So a
do
lot
you know
of-
what the cost of that 10-gallon?
I don't offhand.
But I don't think this is a cost issue.
No.
I think this is a philosophical issue.
No, I agree, but if the guy is stuck, then he's gonna wanna look at the lowest cost possible.
Mhm.
Right.
And that
Which-
would be
The
what,
35 gallon one time a month.
which is,
1057.
This is my area.
That's 1306.
You can understand.
Oh, totally.
Whenever you deviate from the norm, the price is gonna go up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's more expensive for those 20-gallon carts.
Containers.
They are.
Yeah.
They're more
Because
expensive.
they basically use a 35 gallon cart and then they have a special 20 gallon insert that's
Yeah.
attached to
So
the
we drill,
inside.
so it's the size of a 35
Oh,
gallon
okay.
cart.
So you have,
20
the cost
gallons
is even more than.
Because it's
the
a special.
insert.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we could all go to the 35 once a month.
You could if you wanted to,
Okay.
yeah. As long as you're being a really good recycler,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah, most of mine is
Yeah.
recycling. Yeah.
Yeah.
My
Could be a
garbage is
little
every
stinky.
other week,
Little
Oh, you do
smelly
have
Yeah.
every other
in the
week garbage?
summertime.
Okay.
and it's
Yeah.
it's usually not
It's like
full.
yard waste too,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, gets a little slimy.
Mhm.
I know we have a lot of creatures living in it sometimes.
Do you really?
Snails and, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The
Flies
nor-
in the summertime.
The normal stuff
Well,
we
yeah, that's
have
one
around
thing.
here, yeah.
Monthly pickup, yeah, if you,
It gets bright.
did Auburn, do we charge for code compliance activities?
I don't know, that would be a Doug or a Nick question. I don't think so. I don't think we back charge.
Yeah, there's no recovery fee.
I don't
Do
think
you
there
do
is
any,
one.
do you do billing yourself out of the city for any services,
For
water,
wa-
sewer?
yeah.
Water,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, because I would say
Water,
City of
sewer,
Auburn
storm.
too, the other thing that makes them a little unique is that they do all their own billing and they bill for the garbage service, the waters, and the sewer. And so they're in a kind of a different place for mandatory. Like if you're not paying for something, and they take all the calls too, and they keep
So they
the
shut the water
database.
off?
They could shut the
They
water
shut the-
off.
Yeah, and we do
If you're not
that.
paying your water bill,
Oh, 'cause
it
you're not paying
affects your
consolidated.
garbage.
You're not paying
But
your
if you're not
garbage, your
paying your
water.
garbage,
And if you're not paying your garbage, yeah, so
Oh.
they
Yeah.
control.
Well, remember,
all
our
that.
utility bills, water, sewer, and storm, so we have
Right.
the same thing with those three.
Yes,
Right.
but not on
But
the.
it's garbage isn't included.
So is
No, we
the,
don't.
and you may not know this, is a 10-gallon cost close enough to the next cost up or whatever, so that people aren't necessarily trying to abuse that because there's
Oh,
really.
people abuse it,
Do they?
but,
Yeah.
Right, they got a 10 gallon,
Any
and then at the end of the
opportunity
month,
to-
there's like 16,
Yeah.
30 gallon bags stacked around it.
Or they pack
Right.
it down.
So
What's that?
Pack it
in,
down.
Well, I do.
we don't even offer a 10 gallon under the UTC rate structure.
What would that look like?
Oh, it's.
Oh, it's
Oh,
little.
It's
That's
little
like-
itty bitty
Can't
little.
even
Think of the
imagine
two
that.
5-gallon buckets.
That's probably bigger than 10 gallons. That's
Wow.
probably 12, 13 gallon.
Yeah, I think
So
those
that
bags
goes
are usually
in.
13 gallon
13,
bags.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
they're-
Under
yeah.
sink 13.
So, yeah, so
That's.
it's
It's
pretty,
cute.
pretty little.
One,
It's stupid.
one turkey carcass sitting there for a month and,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know,
You should be putting that in your yard.
Yes,
waste.
you should be.
I wouldn't put.
Yeah, we
put-
can do.
You can put
meat
food.
or food.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
In there, yeah.
Oh,
Haven't
yeah.
you been reading your flyers for the last
Yep.
4.5
I put
hours?
pizza boxes in
I don't
yard
put
waste, but I don't put.
any-
I don't think you're supposed to
Our
do that.
compost-
Not
in
anymore
South
pizza
County.
boxes. Not in the county.
You can't.
No,
Our compost, I don't put, we put zero, other than eggshells.
No
It's-
animal. Yeah.
Oh,
No,
no,
because
but in
why do we
yard
want to
waste,
attract
it's
rats?
Oh, yeah, you
Amazing.
can do pizza boxes, excuse me.
Oh.
I thought-
sorry.
It's amazing what
They
you
were
can put
just-
in the yard waste.
The updated version.
Well, I'm talking about my home compost.
Oh, yeah, I'm not talking about
Oh,
that.
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
talking about that.
You do
Oh,
your
you're
own.
right. You can do.
Yeah, I live out in the.
I thought you
rural,
could do
so-
meat.
No,
Fish and
it's for
poultry.
long
No, I
time.
put pizza boxes in my recycling.
Yeah, I did too, yeah.
I think there might be something coming out about the no pizza boxes.
No more pizza
Oh, and
Because
more
it's
pizza
for kids
boxes.
out
Is it
there.
getting to
have
be
it.
a little bit much?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Because
This
people
is an
throw out
older-
too much
older
pizza
flyer.
with the pizza.
Paper towels, though, can go in there.
Mhm.
Clean, yeah, white, not with any, print and
Yeah.
Right.
all that
Oh,
stuff
no
on
ink.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I presume you thought about this and tried to think out of the box about how to, and I've seen this. I just, what can we do?
You're kind of talking to the wrong person when you have this philosophical discussion. Because I'm on the operations side, and again, it isn't just solid waste. There's a certain, when I came into public service from private service, I can't remember who it was, but they kind of gave me some advice, and they said, you're in public service, you have to be careful not, and I don't want this to sound heartless.
It's okay, we
He
know
says
you.
you cannot operate a city on the least common denominator.
Mhm.
You just cannot do that. And since being here, I've had to direct people to shut up, because they'll come to me saying, we're gonna turn off water. And I know that there's children in that home, okay? But I also know that the parents of that children have other issues that prohibit them from paying the bills, and those other issues are choice. And so it's really difficult when you have that, you know, kind of autonomy to say, yeah, I'm gonna shut that off and there's not gonna be any water. And then you have the person coming down, you know, with scars all over their face and sores and saying, you know, my baby's gonna die, right? You can't, you have to manage the city to provide service. And when you're providing water, sewer, and storm drainage, and there's a garbage service, it's for the public health. And unfortunately, from what I've seen since I've been in here almost 10 years, is there's a huge population of people that just do not operate the way we do. We don't think on the same level. And it goes beyond, you know, when you drive down the old Belfair Highway and you drive past the house that has 16 cars in the front driveway and a trailer that's been burned out and it's just sitting there and junk out on the road, and you just scratch your head and say, why would you live like that, right? That's their choice, and that's a code enforcement issue with the county. But, and I know I'm preaching or lecturing here, but it's just, I'm saying from the public management side of it, we could spend a huge amount of time, and I don't even know what Doug spends on his day-to-day on just what I call silly stuff. The people not managing their property, mowing grass, having crap in the front yard, and that's not even getting into the more like public safety code enforcement stuff. And it's just like with me, the amount of time we spend on water shutoffs. So we start with hanging the warnings, then we do the shut off notice, then we shut it off, then we go back out after the bill's been paid and turn the water back on. We go out and we pull meters, we put ecology blocks on meter boxes because they get jumped, and you know, it's constant. You know, people pouring oil down catch basins still happens, and you know,
I don't think any of us dispute the public safety aspect and the hygiene and the overall wellness of the population, but I'm still thinking what we are faced with is somebody who is a model citizen. He's not one of your 16 cars in the yard. I mean, you saw him. He
No.
seemed incredible.
No, but I'm not saying, what I'm saying is, I know that, but, you know, like Scott said, we are dealing with the 1%.
Less than 1%, I would
Right,
say. But
but
yeah,
still,
yeah,
but
that's
still,
what
my issue is also philosophical. It's like, I don't see why we're requiring somebody to pay for a service that they don't need.
Because if we allow the one person out, then we have an out, then there's an out. And not everybody is gonna, there's plenty of the 1%ers.
I think we need to condition it. Obviously, we can't say anybody who says that they do it. We need what you're suggesting, which is
Right,
a
but now,
checklist.
but you're talking about now, you're gonna.
And I haven't
you
thought
have
out
to
the
manage
details.
it.
Yes, I haven't
Right.
thought out the details. But if we had a checklist, maybe we could require them to pay for the code enforcement to go and do the assessment.
I guess a
I
good
mean, and I'm
example.
not thinking of the details. I'm thinking of the principle more.
Yeah, so Paulsboro does their own solid waste.
Mhm.
So you said earlier about thinking outside the box. Well, that would be my rainbow thinking, would be, okay, then let's create a solid waste division like Paulsboro so that we have staffing, and then, you know, you have a director and you have staff to manage it. I mean, that's really what you're saying, is if you want to do these things, you need to have a solid waste. It's kind of the same thing with parks. You know, you want all these different things added, and these. It's like, well, at some point, and we're getting there right now. At some point, we're going to have to create a parks department, because it can't be just an
Right.
ancillary day-to-day operation. And that's what I'm saying about the solid waste, is it's either going to fall on. I mean, we have so many unfunded mandates right now, it's unbelievable. And if you're saying, we had the one thing where we did the utility bills, where we said, okay, if somebody couldn't pay their bill, we work with KCR, and if they would not have to pay that one bill for the month, or we gave them $100 credit, whatever it was. But that was still, KCR's managing that and makes them get into their system, because they have staff to manage it. But this, you know, again, this is just going to sound pretty crass, but at the end of the day, it's the public health side of it is important, but it's the ability to provide service and the staffing that it takes is really the bigger issue in my mind. It's the enforcement. It's the issue we have with the DeKalb Pier. Nobody would have thought that the DeKalb Pier would have been such a pain. It's a beautiful pier, and since we've had that pier, they joke and call me the harbor master because we have boats that continually come up, and we had as many as 15 boats in the bay because they could access, and they're on the docks constantly for 3, 4, 5 days. Signs are clearly there, and the police don't want to have to go down, and they don't have the staff to deal with it. And so we've done this nice amenity that there's a huge police or public works resource problem that we're constantly having to kick people off the pier. People that aren't living in a marina and paying for mortgage. They even joke amongst themselves that they're pirates. And so, that was an unintended consequence of that pier improvement is we have this, I have somebody going down twice a day, and now I'm looking at putting a camera to manage that facility. We just thought, hey, we're going to have this beautiful pier. We didn't think that was going to be a strain on public works, but I send somebody down twice a day, and they keep a log so that we can document. So when we finally write a $100 ticket, we have the documentation. I'm just saying that it's going to come down to a demand on staffing. It's either going to be Public Works Department, police, or code enforcement as soon as you start kind of graying things. And there's enough demand on code enforcement on the stuff that we currently have on the books. So that's really what it boils down to.
Do you think that customer or that resident would be okay with the once a month service? I mean, at $13 or $16?
I think that customer should talk to you
Oh, yeah, we can
Yeah,
set
we
them up
can
with the
set them.
service.
and see
that's-
what's available.
And I think he
Yeah.
actually he doesn't have complaints about you guys, because I think he said he had set up a subscription, and I think that your end told him that it was actually a city requirement.
It's
we were trying to
it's
tell him that it
mandatory
was you guys,
garbage.
but it was really us.
Yeah, we
So
have,
it's a city policy.
we have a tool at our call center that our agents use, it's called Green Pages, and we put in all the details of how we operate in all of our different communities, and we have to put in there when there's mandatory garbage service, because you don't want people canceling, right? I don't want to have this anymore, I'm just going to cancel. So the agents need to know that that's really not an option, that there is a city code around mandatory garbage service. So we put that kind of information in there for them.
So he said he was gonna sign up to avoid further complications.
We
Do we know-
tell him it's a $500 a day fine if they don't have a subscription, so of course
we
he's
tell
gonna
him
sign up.
it's up to. I mean,
Yeah.
It would
Yeah.
never be
Oh.
that, but do we know how much he's paying for this
I
package
don't
service?
know.
If you can give me his address and name, we
Take a
can
look.
look it up and follow up.
943.
So the way I see it, it is a resource issue, and if we had code compliance going out there to, let's just use the word certify.
Mhm.
And follow up.
That's right.
And follow up. That's time that we're giving away to this guy so that he can avoid paying fees. And so, if we were to march down this road, and I don't see that it would be easy, then we'd want to make sure that code compliance's time is captured. So that begins to, sort of disincentivize this a little bit. And it would need to be regular, because I'm sure there would be people who would want to game the system, and I don't think this gentleman is one of them. But somebody would come in and show you the model citizen, and then 2 months later,
And,
There you go.
no, you're
It's
right,
easy.
that's something that I'm not,
Yeah.
I can see your concern that it would be abused, and that's not what we're trying to do here. It's just that in this case, it's almost
Right.
like we want to give,
Well,
exemptions on a case-by-case basis.
yeah, and how do you
But then you
promote
have
this
that, so
kind of
there was
behavior?
the gentleman that we know came to a number of council meetings for quite some time, and he said he had a business in Seattle, and he took his
Took his
garbage
waste
every
over.
time he went to, he had dumpsters in Seattle, and you're completely trusting that individual that
That's what
he's
they're
gonna
doing.
do that,
Right.
So, and then the fact that the council in the past has stayed, true to the code on the 2 previous requests and said no. At that point, if you allow it on this case, are you opening that up? how do you do that? I
Yeah,
mean, now there's
totally
the public
opening
part
it
that
up.
says, hey, the city is now on a case-by-case basis allowing people to not have garbage service. I mean, to me, you'd have to do that, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you wouldn't just let this guy not and be really secretive about it. I think you would have to publish something that says, under certain cases, we're allowing.
Mhm.
Because otherwise, then you're being,
Wouldn't be transparent
yeah, you're not being transparent.
or fair. Because basically when,
So then we'll get inundated with requests.
well, and part of our problem, and as we looked at this with stormwater and everything else, is that when you start to make exceptions, the actual cost for everyone goes up. Because where are most of the costs anyway? In services, staff, benefits, and that's, when you get into enforcement, that's the most expensive part. And so if we add more staff, then the rates are gonna go up for everyone.
Mhm.
And that's what the fine balance that we're trying to always reach out, The service that best meets the demands of the city.
He may just want to de-annex from the city if he can.
De-annex from the city?
Yeah.
Well, he just have to move. He couldn't.
Can you do that?
No.
Hard.
Well,
It's hard, yeah.
Well,
I mean, we
just-
have not made
You
it
could-
attractive for somebody
you
to
couldn't-
want to be in the
an
city.
individual lot couldn't de-annex.
Well, I
Yeah,
know the
but
gentleman
Back
said
review board.
about didn't he say in our last meeting that he about every 8 months or so, he would take his recycling to one of those stations?
Mhm.
So what this would provide is he could actually have that recycling be
Picked up
taking
at his
place
home.
sooner, yeah. I mean, who knows, when you add up how much it costs
Yeah,
to take
it's at a-
garbage or the recycling to a station,
Well, again,
that's also
I
expensive.
just don't think it's the cost issue. I mean,
No, it's a
I'm
principle
talking,
with
it's a.
him, yeah.
Philosophical, yeah.
It's not a cost.
My garbage is about $53 every 3 months. I've got,
Mine's
78.
Mine's
I've got a
about
lot.
97.
I got a lot worse bills than that.
Do we owe this gentleman, I
Like
forget his
my
name,
mortgage.
a response?
Durham,
Is he expecting a response?
I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know. I can email him. We have his email.
So-
Well, I don't think council members should. I think maybe staff should.
Well, I don't
Or
think
the
he,
city.
We can.
The last contact I thought we got was he was gonna do it, he's gonna sign up
Yeah.
to avoid the potential of
Fines.
The
Yeah.
fines, yeah, that's what he said.
I can send a letter,
I think coming from Public Works is.
but it has to, but it has to go to council, right? This has to be an action item, right?
Why?
No.
He asked the council to change the code. That conversation never went to the full council.
Okay.
Right?
I don't recall that.
He's
but
been,
that's-
he's been to a couple of different, speaking from the podium, and we took this on a utility committee level, but I don't think it reached the ears of the full council yet to reopen the conversation. I don't think it's been there yet, right?
So, no, not in terms of like work study, other than just public comment.
Right.
So do you wanna kick this over to work study?
It's gonna have to, if I'm gonna write a letter, my sense is I couldn't write a letter on behalf of the utility committee. It seems like I have to write a letter on behalf of the city, right?
So, I wouldn't want to close the door on this entirely. What I'd want to do is kick it over to him and say, you come up with a program that's been proven to work and doesn't transfer the cost to everybody else, and it's sustainable and is not doesn't create a resource issue for the city or whatever. Because if there is something out there, then we ought to look at it. It doesn't sound like there is something out there.
Or we're not able to think of it.
Or we're not able to think of it. And
Well, like I said, you're talking with, Laura's, how many accounts do you manage statewide? How many cities?
No.
Yeah. So if you would know
It's, yeah.
of a program.
I mean, the
It's-
program that I actually was thinking was
Mhm.
really similar. You'd have somebody go out and do an inspection, but we should charge for that.
Yeah.
And then we should charge for that on a regular basis, and now you start to erode the cost savings that anybody would want in this. And so, why go through that hassle? Just stay with waste management.
Well, I have my.
It was, at that time, it was solid waste, they had a solid waste director who did that work. And,
Wow, see, that's
Yeah, and
that's
there-
even higher
Yeah, I
costs
know.
that you're trying.
and it was a minimum level of service was 10 gallon. Like I said, whether you had an occupied building or not. And if you lived in a home and wanted a 10 gallon, that's where you had to go through this whole checklist. And it had to be approved, and this is what the solid works director did. But that's been many, many years ago. Many years ago.
Yeah,
A lot of budget cuts and reduction in, you know, the workforce and,
Right, but once you set the program up, you can't necessarily stop it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, like my septic system, because I have an alternate system, I require twice a year. In fact, I'm doing it Friday, where I've got to meet with the certified company to come out, and they measure this and measure that, and they have to report it. But there's a whole division at the health department now that wasn't there when these O&M systems for alternative systems were put into place, that manages and makes sure that if I don't turn in my semi-annual report, then I get a letter saying, where's your semi-annual report? So for the life of, as long as I live there, I have to go through this program. And
Yeah.
I gotta pay them, and then they have to have staff to manage it, so.
yeah. You know, the flip side is I totally get this gentleman's frustration is we talk about worldwide creating the lowest footprint we can, and when somebody comes up with it, there's no reward for that.
Well,
And
but, you know, what, if someone is hauling garbage, is there a cost considered in for that?
Mhm.
Because you are actually using fuel to take your garbage elsewhere. You are actually, that garbage has to be paid for by, what, the county? Are these county paid pickup stations, right? So
I
I think you
think-
can self-haul garbage.
somehow,
Yeah, you can self-haul.
Yeah.
we all pay
Yeah.
no matter
Yeah.
what.
But you might as well have us pick it up in a CNG.
Well, you know, I'm just
Natural
saying, when
gas
you look at the
for some
big
people, the
picture,
incentive is financial. So,
Right.
yeah, he goes
Right.
every 6 or 8 months, but the
Right.
cost to go to the transfer station is,
how
I
much,
don't know,
or the
20 bucks
fuel
plus
spent.
fuel, but,
Right,
but that's not gonna be close to the 20 bucks monthly that he's paying.
Right.
Well, if he's going out to Bremer
Yeah.
on a Saturday, his time's worth
Time,
money
yeah,
too.
There's a lot of time.
I went out there by mistake.
There's a lot of
His-
traffic.
I finally got out of the line. I had something.
Did you really?
I usually go to Sand Hill, and it was such a backup for whatever it is we were doing. I just said, you know what,
I don't know about the
Or
time
someplace else.
and his value in that, because he does this as part of his lifestyle.
Mm.
And I think that's, you know, I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I always envisioned the bell curve, right? And you're talking about the 1% over here and the
Sure.
1% over here, but it's really
Mhm.
about whatever the good of the whole is, right? And
Right.
trying to create that community that benefits everybody. So, and I
Yeah,
know that's
no.
that's tough sometimes when you're dealing with one person who has an ask that affects the entire city.
Mhm.
So.
well, and we can continue to look at what the overall garbage pickup is for the citizen. It may be with all the recycling now, and I know for ourselves,
Mhm.
we have very little garbage and a lot of recycling.
That's good.
So maybe it's flipping. So perhaps there will be in the future, we need to keep looking at the garbage volume offset by the recycling, and what does that mean?
Yeah, well,
How do you
that's-
shuffle those carts?
That's already looked at.
Do you have those figures, like,
Oh,
for,
I don't
for
have
just the
that.
city? I
No.
mean, do they
No.
exist?
Mm.
The city's
We send a
sustainability report?
we send a report to the city of
Okay.
tons collected,
Okay.
yes,
Mhm.
for
So
we could
recycling,
do our
yard
charts,
waste,
yeah.
garbage.
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
The
Yeah.
quarterly.
Quarterly, I think.
Quarterly
Yeah.
I think those
sustainability
quarterly,
report.
yeah. I'd be happy to send those to you again if you.
if I would, yeah. I mean, I think I just save them in a
You
folder.
file.
You probably
I
put
think
them
you
in a
told
file
me.
folder, that's what I do with them.
Until
Until somebody asks me for them.
But everybody needs them there.
There's probably usually no interest,
Yeah.
or
So-
minimal interest.
Can bring us over to work study, is that what you wanna do?
No, I don't think that it
No?
is. The mayor asked not to have it come to work study unless we had some kind of action to consider. Right now, these are just ideas.
Well, even if the action is no action, I think that might need to go to the full
Right,
council.
I said, I can't, I'm just, as a staff person, I'm just saying I have to, I don't feel writing a letter if we just say we're having this meeting and we're done, that's fine. But if I'm being asked to write a letter,
Right.
typically I don't write a letter unless it's the council or the mayor direct me to write a letter,
Not a committee.
not a
Right.
committee.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, committees usually.
Yeah, I'm fine with however we want to move forward on this.
Well, I think we should talk to the mayor about it, because he's the one who actually didn't think it should go to the council. So since he made that decision, let's ask him for his input on this. I
Okay.
think that's
Yeah, that's
reasonable.
fine.
Okay, I can send the mayor an email,
And then-
and I'll copy in committee members.
Right. And the thing is, I'm not sure where we're at with, as a city needing to respond, because I haven't been part of that. So I don't know if he's needing to get back to this gentleman, or how it is, where we're at with that. I'm just not sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm not trying to be obstreperous, I just know that, I would feel very uncomfortable sending this gentleman a letter saying, hey, we're not gonna change the code. And he'd say, well, you're not part of the legislative body, what,
Right.
who directed you? And so I think, yeah.
So we'll actually ask the mayor if he's comfortable having it go to a work study, even if there is no action.
Yeah. I know the state's different. I mean, the state, when things go to committee, that committee though has legislative approval or voting ability to see whether a bill, moves out of that committee.
Well,
The-
did
These committees aren't set up that way.
Did the gentleman actually send a letter to the city? Well, there was an email.
Did you write a letter? I don't know. He sent an email or two.
I've never seen any correspondence. I know
Yeah.
I've only seen them.
Well, I think we can consider
From the
his
podium.
verbal requests to be just as important as a written request.
Well,
It's captured in minutes, and he did email. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
But I didn't know
I
if
don't
it was.
recall specific if
You know
if
what?
he
I think
said,
it was
"I
just
wanna-"
sent to us. So actually, it may not have been sent to the city.
I've not seen it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, well, we'll talk to Mayor about how he wants to proceed with this. I think that's wise. Okay,
Okay,
anything
good.
else?
Good.
Yeah, we're happy to provide you any
Yeah.
information that you need, and really, we're here, to provide the service for you as, the city dictates the service needs to be provided. So.
How often do you have this discussion?
Not very often.
Okay.
No, but that doesn't mean anything, because there's so many things that are changing in our world, period, right?
Right.
So,
Nationwide, are you seeing a trend with less garbage, more recycling? I mean, that's a big question.
there's really, I'm not really seeing or know of a trend for less garbage.
Right.
The recycling world is really kind of where everything is right now, and packaging
Uh-huh.
and how we buy products.
Mhm.
And then there's a whole nother conversation going on around, what do they call it? I can't even remember the term for it. It's deciding when you buy something,
Mm.
what that carbon footprint is overall to manufacture
Right,
it, to
consumer-
transport it.
It's a
Yeah.
consumer
And s-
decision making.
Yeah, and sometimes you may think buying it in this recycled material, because you can
Right.
throw it in your cart, is better than buying it in something else you're gonna throw in the garbage. And in fact, the piece going in the garbage creates less of an environmental
Yeah,
impact.
it's the paper bag
It's a-
versus the plastic bag.
Oh,
issue,
yeah,
too.
it's wild,
The
but the
footprint
whole.
from paper bags.
Yeah, and the weight of the material anymore, there used to be a lot of, glass newspaper as a great example. People used to only read newspapers, right?
Mhm.
And now you're getting everything digitally, online, and people aren't buying newspapers, so the weight of recycling is lessened.
Less.
And packaging has changed a lot too. You have a lot of lighter
Pouches.
packaging material, and
Those
there's not as much
pouches.
glass.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
It's a lot.
and so
Instead
that's
of the
really
peanuts.
where we
Yeah,
see
I
a
hate-
lot
I hate
of
styrofoam.
like changes
Yeah.
Cause I
happening.
it takes up room in the garbage, you
Yeah,
gotta break it up,
styrofoam's
it gets
Oh, I know,
everywhere.
I wish they all disintegrated.
Yeah.
And they don't.
No.
Don't
I
say-
wish,
No.
The
I
new
wish they
ones
do that.
Cornstarch ones. But
Yeah, the edible ones that you can technically.
Now, you can't.
Burn it.
Burn it, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
No,
I'm
take
just
the
Oh, we used
kidding.
to.
Yeah.
That was my job. I
As a
used to-
kid, that was
I
always
would-
fun.
Right, we had a
Yeah.
55-gallon drum in the
Yeah,
back,
yeah, I
and we
remember-
burned our garbage, and
Yeah.
it was
Oh, yeah,
And when you
there's
remember
families,
that?
a lot of families do it.
eggs,
Oh, yeah.
shells, and
Mhm.
you burned your garbage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back in the day, everyone
Oh, yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have our next meeting
But we
November
also use for
21st.
oil
Okay.
on the property.
And
We'll change the-
we'll check to
Need to
see
get rid
what
of that gas.
direction maybe we should take it. And
Very nice, isn't it?
It's like
Okay.
Came off of
Oh
printer.
my gosh, it does.